as you're working within Gemini, it manages that load. It wants to push you to stimulate your curiosity. So it's not just here's the answer when you're in learning mode, but it doesn't want to get you so frustrated that you want to like throw your Chromebook out the window. It's trying to enhance your humanity rather than replace your thinking.
You're listening to the Blue Skies Leadership Podcast, featuring discussions with international school leaders about the future of education. The podcast embodies the spirit of reciprocity by sharing strategies and change initiatives from leading schools around the world. Here are your hosts, Dan Kerr and Daniel Mendes.
How do you keep sane? What do you do to keep yourself from being overstressed?
What I do is I run. I'm a runner. And I think it's important that people find some sort of avenue or outlet to keep their mental health and their balance. And for me, I'm hitting the streets of Saigon at 4:00 every morning and just listen to music and process sort of my feelings and get ahead of the day and to think about what it is I need to do, and to get that release as well. It's important for me. So I'm a runner. What about you? How do you find balance and keep your social emotional well-being?
Every morning I walk the dog, and I do a centering activity where I just take a few deep breaths and actually allow the stress to dissipate. Been listening to the app Calm.
Yeah.
It's been just words of wisdom and just wonderful. And then I get the privilege of walking my son to swim class. So I end up talking with him and just getting ready for the morning, and just that's my peaceful time. So makes my rest of the day a wonderful time for me.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you talked about your kids, because I have a daughter, Gabby, who is my sunshine and rainbows. And whenever I feel a little bit stressed, I am lucky to have her to sort of bring me out of it and to give me a little bit of sunshine, and my wife, Jocelyn, as well. So we're lucky, both of us, to have such beautiful families.
You know, we're also lucky to have Jennie Magiera on our show today.
I'm really excited about her, Google, wow, and all the stuff that's happening with AI. So yeah, let's get started with that.
We're honored to have Jennie Magiera, Google's Global Head of Education Impact. She's not just shaping how technology transforms classrooms, but also championing equity and student voice.
Well, Jennie, welcome to the show. We're very excited to have you on here, talk all things Google, and you have such a rich and experienced CV that we'd like to dig into. It's really just a gift for us to have you on here this morning. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
For every guest, we like to start with the idea of a blue sky vision of school. So we kind of like to turn that over to you now. What does a blue sky vision of school look like for you? Where's the world of international schools or schools heading? Where should it be heading? And maybe what should we all be prioritizing to bring this vision to life? What do you think?
I could go on forever. And I think every educator has their mile-long wish list. And I think, honestly, a lot of educators, if we were to paint our utopian vision for a school, moonshot, no limits, I think it would be kind of similar. Like maybe the shape and place and like the tactical details, but the vision of like student agency and access and equity, I think all of those things would be similar. So I think I'm going to take a different tactic. And instead of like giving the like moonshot, blue sky, ideal vision, I'm going to give like a regular day. Like maybe it's a little overcast, but it's not pouring. It's like, it's better wet. Like here in Chicago right now, it's pouring. Like my internet went out a few hours ago. I hope it lasts for right now. So I'm going to give you like a better than today version. And that's not the pessimist in me or the glass half empty. It's my like, I think this can happen. I think this is achievable.
Great.
What I'd love to see in this average day sky, the Chicago on a May 20th sky, is excellent schools should be all schools and not some schools. I'd love to see how we can make sure that we're uplifting the entire system and structure and logic model that we have into institutions of learning rather than building outside of the system. And I say that as someone who, worked in New York City public schools and Chicago public schools and District 62 schools. I think that there are amazing private institutions of learning, international schools, et cetera. I've worked with them as well. I went to a private school for high school. And I think that there's so much there that we can bring to public institutions of learning as well. So I'd like to find a way that we can uplift all buildings and all institutions of learning.
I love that. Excellent schools should be all schools. And I feel like Google's mission has always been like that in terms of leveling it with technology and providing technology for those that don't have. We've been very blessed to work at schools that have been able to provide for our students, but I know that Google's done a lot for underprivileged schools. Let's dive into those innovative things that Google is doing. Yeah. So what's happening at Google that you'd like to highlight, and what innovations or Blue Skies initiatives are being talked about globally?
Gosh, so much. I mean, today, we have I/O, our big developer conference at Google. It's like our Super Bowl. And our chief, Sundar, was on stage and talking about like all the amazing things that are happening with Gemini, with Google AI, and, Gemini 2.5 Pro just being such a really incredible model, but that it's built off of an entire learning model that a team at Google called the pedagogy team put together. So they looked at research from education experts, educators like yourselves, and said, what is learning science? What does the best of learning look like? And they distilled it into 5 learning science principles: inspire active learning, manage cognitive load, deepen metacognition, stimulate curiosity, and adapt to the learner. And that drives product development for all of Gemini now. So like we took that and it empowers this model called LearnLM. And LearnLM is a Gemini model that feeds into the broader umbrella Gemini model. And now it's part of 2.5. As you're working within Gemini, it manages that load. It wants to push you to stimulate your curiosities. It's not just here's the answer when you're in learning mode, but it doesn't want to get you so frustrated that you want to like throw your Chromebook out the window. It's trying to enhance your humanity rather than replace your thinking. And I think it's really amazing to see how that's being applied to tools that are built expressly for teaching and learning, like the Learn About Lab model, which gives you like a conversational tutor, all the way to practice sets in Google Classroom, and just seeing how educators and students are using Gemini to further their learning and their instruction.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that there was a pedagogy team at Google and that they were called that. There's a lot to market. I feel like there's Notebook LM and, Gemini, and there just seems like there's a lot. Where do you see that vision going? Is it all going to come together, or are you looking to see how that's all shaping out and what takes hold in education, or how does that work?
Google's a huge corporation, but working here, I feel like I work at a ton of tiny startups that are tied together with like spit and duct tape. And so there's all these teams that are innovating and exploring. And so, you've got your Notebook LM, you've got practice sets, you've got Google Classroom. And to your point, like what is the umbrella? That's marketing's job to think about like how the branding and the UX is going to come together. But what I can tell you is it's the same battery that's powering it all. So it's all Gemini. So Notebook LM, practices, all the things that you're hearing about, even search. I don't know if you've seen the news, bringing some of our Project Astro, which is like the video capabilities within Gemini, into search. All of that is just Gemini. It's just different applications and different flavors of Gemini. I think one way to think about it is like everything is Gemini, and then there's different like features within it that have different names.
I did see that news release this morning about the Google search, and that was super exciting. We've had a lot of fun here at school as a Google Suite school, really looking at ways that we can use AI to enhance student learning as an opportunity for kids. And it's just this journey that we've been going on, and we're so excited about the next couple of years because who knows what that's going to look like.
It's fun to play around with all the things that Google has been giving us. So
yeah, it's staggering. Well, listen, can I steer you towards something I know that you're passionate about, and it's the idea of belonging in schools. And I was wondering if you could speak to us about how schools could address issues of equity and inclusion, and how do we ensure that all students have a really high access, high quality education, regardless of their backgrounds. Can you speak to us about some ideas around belonging?
I think there's so many ways to think about this. Like I mentioned to you, like as a professional, my background has been almost exclusively as a public educator. But I went to my first 2 years of high school, I went to a neighborhood public school in Orlando, Florida. And then my last 2 years of high school, I went to a private school, a boarding school in the United States called Phillips Exeter Academy. And I was on financial aid. My family could not afford it. And one of the things I really appreciated as a young person, as a learner in that space, is my access to everything was as just like everyone else. And I felt really seen for who I was. Like they knew, for example, that I had never really interacted with snow in my adult life. I moved from the Northeast when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So like I didn't have any working memory of like snow or how to walk on snow. And one of the teachers stopped me after class and was like, "Hey, it's going to snow today." Like I noticed that this, but they did it in a way that didn't count me out. They knew my identity and they knew where I was coming from and they knew what I needed, but they did it in a way that called me and didn't call me out. And they were looking at me like a whole person. And that was my math teacher. It wasn't just like, "Oh, hey, like you have calculus homework." It was also like, "You're not wearing socks and it's about snow." And I didn't own any socks. Like I had like running socks, but not like it's gonna snow kind of socks. So she like took me and brought me to the local convenience store and like helped me pick out socks and like talked to me about like how to walk on snow when it melts and then freezes into ice and snows again. Talked to me about sleet. It was really amazing because I don't think I ever really talked to her about being from Florida, but she was thinking about my whole life and how I wasn't from that space and that place and that culture.
Right.
And so I think as with international schools, that is something that is prevalent. You have a group of students coming from all over the place, from different cultures, different languages, different backgrounds. And I think that the faculty in those buildings have this huge daunting responsibility because it's not just helping these young people learn the subject matters, but like looking after them, feeling a sense of belonging within often a new time, place, climate. And that's not nothing. Another quick thing I'll name is the summer before I graduated from university, I had an internship with the Royal Thai Scholars Program. So my role was they were international students in the United States through that program. And I taught them at a boarding school in New Hampshire as like a cultural immersion program. And I think something for me too that I realized is doing the duality of honoring their culture while helping them assimilate to the culture of the space. So I did a lot by being like, this is what it's like to live on a lake in New Hampshire in the summer. And like, what is a cheeseburger? And like, what is the 4th of July? And what are like some American pastimes? But also respecting that the young ladies that I was teaching didn't want to be in the sun. They didn't want to like, all the girls in New Hampshire wanted to like put on their bathing suits and lie out on the deck and like sunbathe. And that's very not the culture of some of these young ladies coming from the Thai program. So like it was a balance of helping them gain awareness and exposure to the new space while honoring their identity. And I think that's not unique to international schools, but it's so much more needed because of the diversity of students in your community.
What you spoke about really resonates with the two of us. I mean, this is the journey that we've been on at SSIS. And you touched on the idea of relationship building between teachers and students and really getting to know your young people as human beings as opposed to just learners in the classroom. And that's a big push forward for us. And leveraging the idea of cultural diversity and understanding who's in our building and what kind of cultures and experiences and celebrations they bring with that. And so those are two areas that we've been excited to go down. So thank you for talking about that. It resonated really well.
Yeah, Jenny, that was a beautiful story. I kind of made me go back to where I started up, and I was an immigrant into Canada, and all my friends were immigrants, and we all got to learn about each other's cultures through going to school, in Canada. I'm right there with you. And I feel like I belong here in international schools because I'm surrounded by all these different nationalities. And it's just a beautiful place to be in an international school. You get to see all these wonderful cultures. So looking ahead, what do you think are some big challenges and opportunities for international schools, or just schools in general, I guess, if we're leveling the field here? What are some big challenges and opportunities for international schools?
I think that there's the question of, is this a fad or is this the new way of doing things? And I think it's not new, right? I remember when one-to-one devices came out and we're like, is this a thing? Or is this just like the thing of 2010. And now 15 years later, we're like, is AI a thing? And, more and more we're getting indicators like, yeah, this is a thing. It's not going away. And I think, how do we continue to center what we're here to do and who we're here to serve and not make it about the thing, right? And again, fill in the blank, maker spaces, project-based learning, anything you can think of, gamification. I've been to Ed Camp or a conference and I'm like, oh my God, gamification. I came back and I'm like, all right, everything in my math class is gamification. And then I lost sight of the forest and the trees because I was trying so hard to gamify everything. And I'm like, but wait, why am I doing this again? What do I teach? Do I teach gamification? I teach students how to be mathematicians. Let's remember what it is that we're trying to do, identify the opportunities that we've yet to meet because of barriers, and now ask ourselves, how does Gemini, how does AI help us overcome the barriers that we've been facing forever? So for example, maybe it is that, how do I integrate local and birth culture for a young person within the context of my curriculum? Before, STEAM would come out of my head trying to find a way to do that was elegant and respectful and appropriate and relevant. And now Gemini can be my best friend. Now Gemini's not going to get it right 100% of the time, but it has the computing power to bring in the power of the internet and all these other things that I might not know about to help me come up with some concepts that I can then use my human brain, my teacher in the loop brain to come up with. But I think starting with, what is my need? And then how do I bring AI in versus just reading a bunch of blogs with a bunch of AI tips and then just copying them.
I totally agree with you. What you said, I just went over my career, the internet. I'm a little bit older maybe, but the internet really shaped education, then the one-to-one, and then even social media is in there. And then now with AI, what you just mentioned, that would have taken a lot of time. And we know that teachers are super busy, that some of those things would just go to the wayside and say, I got to teach this curriculum. I'm not even going to think about that. And now you've got that partner with you that can actually help you to do and to think about those things. Oh, don't forget to think about belonging, or don't forget to think about UDL. My question to you is, over these years, the one-to-one, perfect example of how I was a big promoter of laptops and saying, we need these in the hands of kids, and because they'll be able to research and create with videos and this and that. But the unintended consequence was distraction, maybe watching a little bit too much YouTube. Where do you see AI? What's maybe the unintended consequence that maybe you don't see right now that we maybe should be thinking about?
With all, Voltaire and Spider-Man's uncle always said, with great power comes great responsibility. And
great quote.
So powerful, right? And I think that my job at Google is making sure that we are supporting and enabling educators and learners worldwide to use technology in impactful ways. We are one of the teams responsible for creating AI literacy resources that are coming out of Google. And one of the foundational things we want to make sure people understand is what is AI? What can it do? And what are the risks? And what should you be mindful of? And the risks aren't just in use, but even intentional use, but passive use. A lot of people don't realize where AI is embedded. And it's important for folks to know, when AI is in a search engine, when AI is telling you what the next movie you should watch on your favorite streaming service, and when that decision is you. And so I think that the human in the loop piece and the cognition of what is the tool doing is very important. It's like taking a pill and you don't know what it does. It's is this an Advil or is this a Claritin? I don't know. Yeah. It'll be fun to find out. Either I'm going to have a headache or allergies. Who knows? It's important to know what the tool is. The second piece is understanding the capabilities and are you using it correctly, right? Are you using a fork to dig a hole? That's not what there's a shovel. You could use a shovel instead. What's in the tool chest? And what else can it do? Oh man, this fork wasn't great at digging that hole, but you know what it really is? It's super helpful for me eating my dinner. Whole beans. You don't want to be Scuttle from The Little Mermaid, who's oh yeah, it's a dingle hopper. then I think it's like, to your point, then you can get to the unintended consequences. So I think like even before you get to the unintended, I think there's so many other consequences that come from misuse of the tool, not understanding what the tool is there. Then when you get into those things, it's of course, the bias and making sure that your prompting is correct and understanding like when hallucinations happen. Now, a lot of people want to be like, oh my gosh, like AI could do all these things. I think that's where schools come in too, because I remember being a third grader before I had computers in my classroom, and we were talking about sources you can trust and sources you couldn't trust. And I remember being like that little 8-year-old girl in Central Florida, and my teacher holding up like a National Enquirer and an Orlando Sentinel in front and being like, which of these newspapers are real news? And so even then we had information sources that could lead you astray. And the adults in our lives, the folks whose job to educate, helped us have discernment and cognition that like you can't trust everything you read. You can't believe everything you hear. And so I think in this age of AI, it's continuing that. It's continuing to say, like, how do you fact check? How do you look at resources? How are you cognizant of where the pitfalls of consuming information are?
I also like to go back to something you said a couple of minutes ago with regards to trends and challenges. I think you touched on how there's schools sort of fall in love with these new bells and whistles and all these new shiny things. And I think that leads into something that's important that we sometimes don't talk about, which is initiative fatigue at schools. And we tend to get away from the idea of depth and more to breadth and always looking after the new thing. And what that does is sometimes impact a school's or a person's social emotional well-being, because it's just so much to get through. And that leads into students too, which is something I'm interested in your answer around student achievement. Can you talk to us a little bit about the focus on academic achievement? I think that's still very much alive at international schools or high achieving schools where grades are king or queen, and that seems to be driving everything. But I'm hoping that we see this changing. Do you think it's becoming more of a well-rounded, holistic measurement that's emerging? Like, what does true student success look like for you? Is it changing beyond just academic achievement?
Going back to your first question about the blue skies, like if I could like go on forever, I think like after kind of I don't even say leveling the playing field. I don't think that's the right phrase. I think it's just like more access to excellent schools, because I think everyone needs different things, right? Like some people are going to need to live in a different country or like are seeking a more diverse environment. So I don't think equal is right. I think it's more like equitable access. So after that, then my next wish on my 3 wishes would be changing the magnetic north of schools. Like what is it that we value and how do we measure it? And there's another quote, just to throw quotes out here, is the one by Andy Hargreaves, which is, you should measure what you value, don't value what you can measure.
Nice.
And I think right now we're doing the latter, right? Like we're like, oh, test scores are important because it's like what we can measure in schools. But if you really sit down with a human being and you're like, what do you care about humans and young people knowing how to do? Is it like Pythagorean theorem and like, right? And they're like, no, like I want them to be critical thinkers, good human beings. Like, yes, I want them to have baseline numeracy and literacy, but that's like a piece of the whole human we're trying to create. And then you're like, well, why aren't we measuring them? It's like, well, it's too hard. Like, how do you measure like critical thinking on a standardized, scaled way that is comparable across institution? Fun news. We have this fun little thing called AI now that it has large language models that can ingest language and process it. Oh my God. When like AI LLMs became a big thing we were talking about, I was like, oh my God, like maybe we're going to finally have the ability to measure what we value. And I think we're starting to see startups who are exploring that, who are talking about building AI tools and models that like help dipstick into social emotional wellness, that dipstick into quote unquote soft skills. There's an amazing AI leader named Charles Fidel out of Boston. I think he's originally French, but he now lives in the Boston area, who has written a ton about the intersection of AI and human capacity and kind of these capabilities. And then OECD just came out with an AI capabilities index that looks at where AI tools and human capabilities intersect and how they compare against each other. And I think that like as we continue to move on, we're going to see more and more of this kind of research and innovation coming out. That's my hope. And I hope that when the ability to measure it comes out, then schools can realign to that. Because at the end of the day, having been a school administrator, test scores do matter. Like parents ask about it because it's the gateway into the next step of life. It's the gateway into university, then that's the gateway into career. But we need to create a different gate.
We often talk about that being the beautiful balance, right? The balance of creating good students for our world, but also good human beings for our world. And schools are awash with that. And we have a great data analytics specialist here named Tom Lupton. Daniel and myself and him have been looking at what kind of data are we trying to get from kids, and how can we use that to look at this beautiful balance idea and to try to find some sort of platforms or mechanisms to really get data on what it is that's really important for us and kids' development. So thank you for speaking about that. There's something that we're trying to do here at school.
What I really got from our conversation today is that Google is not only a tech company, but also thinking about how we use it, how pedagogy is involved in it. And it really resonated through what you said today. So I really appreciate that. Jennie, what do the next 6 months look like for you? What's happening?
Gemini. Just Gemini, like everything. I wake up, I think about Gemini, I go to sleep. My daughter uses Gemini. When she like isn't happy with what I'm saying, she's like, Mom, can I just talk to Gemini? It really is like, it's so much of what we're doing internally right now because it's so great. Like it's revolutionized all parts of my life, honestly. My job, like not just like the texture of my job, like what I'm doing every day and thinking about, but like the way I do my job. I was just coming up with some new concepts for a program we're building. And I was like literally banging my head on the desk. And I was like, oh my God, why aren't I just using Gemini? So I was like, Gemini, just look at all the work that I've done across these 6 documents. And can you tell me what I'm missing? And it was like, Jennie, have you thought about this? And I'm like, oh, thank God. And it like went through like 50 pages of work that I'd been doing for a week. Wow. That's huge. But then even again, like as a mother and who has a very curious 6-year-old, I'm Catholic by marriage. So we celebrate Easter, but I didn't really grow up Catholic. And I don't have a secure understanding of a lot of the Catholic rituals and histories. But we're raising our children Catholic. That's a choice that we've chosen for our family. And so we had an Easter celebration recently. We went to Mass, and then my daughter came home and she's like, what's a crucifixion? Why did they kill Jesus? Like, what is Jesus, a man or a God? And I was like, ah! So I pulled up Gemini and I was like, and I had Lucy say, hi, I'm Lucy. I'm 6 years old. I have these questions, and it handled it through that Learn LM model so developmentally appropriately. Like the way it responded to her was exactly how I'd want it to respond to a 6-year-old, which was like, there's this religion and this is the belief set and this is how they like think about it. And this is the value and this is why it matters to people and why it's emotional. And it handled the concept of death and crucifixion in such an age appropriate way where it didn't really talk about like the violence of it, but the symbolism behind it. And I would have I can't even repeat it right now. Like it did it so elegantly. My job is so embedded in Gemini. And for me as a human being, I don't ever want to do a job where what I wake up thinking about and working on isn't something that I believe can have a positive impact in the world. And that was really important to me when I decided to leave schools and come to Google. And it's really exciting because Gemini is not just the product to me. It's like this amazing opportunity. And I'm really excited to help be part of the team that uses its power for good and make sure that, you know, we're practicing that great responsibility that comes with this great power.
Hey, Jennie, can I just one quick other question? We talked a little bit about the idea of soft skills and preparing kids for the future for skills and competencies. We're doing a lot of work here for our habits of a learner to try to identify those for students. From your job and where you sit, can you maybe talk to us about the 4 or 5 really important skills and competencies that we should be preparing kids for the future of the world when they get into the world of work?
Such a good question. Oh, I have to narrow it down. Actually, it's really interesting that you asked that. We have a Future of Education report. I don't know if you've seen it, that we came out with a few years ago, where we did this research where we asked, I think it was something like 79 experts across like 29 countries about like what in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be needed. And it really came up with like a couple of things. First of all, like global problem solving. So like thinking locally, but also globally, like, well, how are we teaching young people to be able to solve problems at the global level, like both geographically global, but like just like higher order, like bigger thinking, like how are we solving problems? Secondly, being able to consider learning as a lifelong journey. And I know like as educators, we all know that, but I think like building that into young people from an age of like, I remember being in school and being like, when I turn 18, I'm done. Like, or when I turn 21, I'm done. Like I have to make it to senior year in college and then I'm done learning and I'm done. I'm finished growing. And like, how do we get kids to think like, actually, I'm building a foundation and I'm going to be learning forever.
That's nice.
And then finally, I think then it's really thinking about, as AI is becoming more and more of a thing, like what are the human needs? How are we getting at that? And I think it's the ability to synthesize and put together the information and make human judgment calls. The AI can give me 10 different options for what I was missing in my 50-page document at work today, but I have to look at it and say like, okay, of those, what is most important? And what do I think is wrong? And so I think being able to have that like highest order of thinking when you're thinking about like Bloom's taxonomy or that judgment, and how do you build judgment in young people?
Well, thank you. That's validating for us. I think we're looking at the same sort of things that we're trying to prepare our kids for in the future. Listen, this has been a fascinating conversation for us. If people want to get a hold of you and find you, is the best place through what? LinkedIn, your website? Like, how can people find you?
In the matrix. It's funny. I used to like live on Twitter and I was just like, you could just be like at Miss Magiera and I'd be like there 24/7.
Yeah.
I think a conflation of like just life in general, being a mother of two and other things. I think LinkedIn's probably your best bet, but I want to apologize to anyone who reaches out to me and I don't respond. I think you just have to like find me on the street and catch me in the streets of Chicago.
Well, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. We've really enjoyed every aspect of this. The fun stuff that's coming out of Google, the pedagogy, the belonging. We've really enjoyed every moment of this. So thank you so much, Jenny.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to meet you and to have this conversation with you. And I hope our paths cross at some point. If you're ever in this region, please say hello and we'll try to find you on the streets of Chicago if we're ever there. But wow, what a gift. Thank you for taking the time with us this morning, Jenny.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Blue Skies Leadership Podcast. Do you know a specific leader who would be a great guest? Fill out all the details at blueskiesleadership.com.